Hello, my name is Wren, and welcome to a Wren on a Journey where I document my life living with C-PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, and bipolar 2. Today I wanted to dive in and talk about my C-PTSD diagnosis, how I obtained the diagnosis, and how it affects me today. Before we begin, I want to give a disclaimer and say that I'm not a medically licensed professional, and what I am talking about today in this video should not be used to diagnose anybody with C-PTSD or PTSD. This video documentation is solely for the purpose of personal use only, so I can document my life with these disorders. Additionally, I would like to give a content warning for this video and say that there will be mentions of verbal, emotional, and sexual abuse. During this video, I will be diving into more specific traumatic memories that I did not cover in my introduction video and giving more details about them. So there is a chance that what is talked about can become graphic. If that's something that is a trigger for you, please take care of yourself and click off of this video if and when you need to. If you've not watched my introduction video where I talk about my life background, my diagnoses, and my goals in life, I highly recommend going to check that out before you watch this video. Now, to get into the video. Before I dive into my personal experience with C-PTSD, I want to first explain to you guys the difference between PTSD and C-PTSD. I will go ahead and put my references down below in the description for those who want to check this out. According to the Psychiatric Institute of Washington, PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, is a mental health condition triggered by experiencing or witnessing a traumatic event. Common events leading to PTSD include combat exposure, natural disasters, or serious accidents. Symptoms of PTSD can broadly be categorized into 4 types. Intrusive memories, meaning recurring, unwanted memories of the traumatic event. Avoidance, meaning steering clear of places, people, or activities that remind one of the trauma. Negative changes in thinking and mood, meaning feeling hopelessness, emotional numbness, or difficulty maintaining close relationships. And changes in physical and emotional reactions, meaning being easily startled or having trouble sleeping. C-PTSD, or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, arises from prolonged or repeated trauma over years or months, rather than a single event. It's often seen in cases of childhood abuse or long-term domestic violence. Symptoms of C-PTSD include symptoms of PTSD, but also feature additional challenges such as emotion regulating issues, meaning difficulty managing emotions leading to extreme mood swings, consciousness alterations, meaning feeling detached from oneself, often experiencing memory lapses regarding the trauma, negative self-perception, meaning persistent feelings of helplessness, shame, guilt, or being different from others, interpersonal relationship difficulties, meaning struggles with trusting others and maintaining relationships, and distorted perceptions of the abuser, meaning becoming preoccupied with the relationship to the abuser. Treatment for PTSD can involve the following: cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. This helps individuals change negative thought patterns. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, also known as EMDR. This involves processing traumatic memories through guided eye movements, and medication. Antidepressants such as SSRIs can be effective. For C-PTSD, the treatment is more intensive due to the complexities involved. Treatments can involve the following: dialectical behavioral therapy, also known as DBT. This focuses on teaching coping skills to manage emotions, and group therapy, which provides a supportive community and helps with interpersonal skills. Moving on to my C-PTSD diagnosis, this was the first of my disorders that I was properly diagnosed with outside of having an ADHD diagnosis when I was 7. Growing up, despite the abuse I went through with my biological mom and dad, I was never really put into any sort of counseling or therapy like I probably should have been. This was due to the fact that my adoptive mom thought I didn't really need therapy since I appeared to be a happy-go-lucky kid most of the time. Therapy wasn't exactly a reoccurring conversation in my house due to the fact that, truthfully, I was a pretty happy kid most of the time, and my trauma didn't appear to affect me all that much. However, looking back at it now, I can see that my trauma did affect me a lot more than I thought, and I just wasn't aware of it. I was very untrusting and weary of being around men, and sudden loud noises or yelling would make me extremely anxious. I used to stay in my room a lot and never really ventured out into other parts of the house unless I had to use the restroom or I needed to eat. This primarily stemmed from not only the stuff that my mom's husband did to me, but also when my dad was alive. I remember many times where my dad would yell and scream at my mom for something that set him off. And this could have been anything, really. He was a very, very controlling man. While I don't want to speak for my mom and her trauma involving my dad, I will say he would monitor her whereabouts, especially if she needed to leave the house for whatever reason. While I don't remember specifics of why he would yell and scream, I imagine a lot of those times he might have been agitated by the fact that she would leave the house and he would get in his mind that she would meet other men. That's just a guess, and I don't have any evidence of that actually being the reason. I just know my dad seemed to feel the need to have control of everything at all times. When my dad would yell and scream, I remember always running to go hide in places where I thought he wouldn't be able to reach me. I remember one of those places was next to our TV in the living room, and it just so happened to be one of those massive rear projection TVs that took a whole team to move. I remember a specific memory of watching my dad screaming at my mom in the living room, and I was watching as far back as I could behind this TV, covering my ears and staring at the two of them. Additionally, I do have PTSD from my dad sexually abusing me on multiple occasions, as well as my cousin on my dad's side of my family. This has caused a reaction for me over the years, specifically if I'm laying down on a couch or a bed where I'll sleep with my mouth or head covered by a blanket at all times. It became a coping mechanism from when I was younger and has stayed around ever since. I will say, it did get worse around the ages of 13 through 18, and this was why I was living with my mom and her husband, and this was due to the fact that her husband was sexually harassing me during those years. While he didn't exactly force himself onto me like what my dad and cousin did, he was still doing things that caused me to have a lot of distrust and paranoia, and those things ultimately caused me to be scared of him, and eventually also caused me to be really angry with him and feel a lot of disgust having to live under the same roof as him. I do also have a lot of PTSD involving my mom and her narcissistic behavior, but I do plan on going into the specifics of my relationship with my mom in another video. That being said, she did used to yell and scream at me when we would get into arguments. These arguments used to occur regarding my sister and her visitation rights during and after my custody case, but they would also occur if I expressed any emotion other than being happy. If I was angry or annoyed and I had a tone with her, I was told to stop. I was told that I was a kid and that everybody knew it and that I was treating her like. If I was depressed or anxious, I was told that I had no reason to be depressed or anxious and that I was being dramatic. Additionally, if she began yelling at me during an argument and I began crying, she would tell me to stop, that I didn't have a reason to cry, and that she would give me a reason to cry. While I was in high school, I decided to take it upon myself to utilize the 2 counselors that were present during school hours. I lived in a very, very small community and went to a school of 400 people, and the counselors that were there weren't great. This was the only type of therapy that I could get without my mom knowing, and eventually I believe I started using what was called the SAFE program, and at that time I was diagnosed with PTSD. I wasn't in the program for very long, mostly because it wasn't helping me with issues at home because I was too scared to speak up about what my mom's husband was doing to me, and I thought the way that my mom was treating me was normal. During my time using the program, I mostly spoke about my trauma with my dad as I thought that that was the thing that was bothering me the most. It was not. Once I got out of high school and I started university, I started realizing with the help of my friends that the way that my mom had been treating me wasn't normal. At the time, I remember I used to apologize a lot to people when it wasn't really needed, and I was also a really big people pleaser and didn't really say no to anything. Eventually, I knew I wanted to go to therapy not only to learn how to cope with the trauma involving my dad, but also this newly found trauma involving my mom. I remember jumping around to a few therapists and each of them had diagnosed me with C-PTSD instead of PTSD. While I have gone through CBT therapy more times than I can count, I've also gone through EMDR therapy to help cope with my PTSD. EMDR therapy has been an extremely intense process for me, and by the end of my sessions, I'm usually left pretty tired. But I have found that this type of therapy has been more effective for me, if not the most effective type of therapy that I've done. While it hasn't been prescribed for my PTSD specifically, I've also been prescribed SSRIs in the past to help combat my anxiety and depression, but they've either made me extremely nauseous or haven't worked for long periods of time. My current psych believes that this is probably due to my bipolar diagnosis and the fact that I need antipsychotic medication and antidepressants. While my PTSD doesn't give me flashbacks where I relive traumatic memories like what you might see in veterans, I'm still reminded of those traumatic memories and I can remember where I was and what happened during those memories. That being said, I'm still very much in the present when those memories happen, and I'm usually able to focus on other things to distract myself from those memories. Now, there are times where I'm not able to distract myself enough and I end up sort of hyperfixated on the traumatic memories. This tends to happen when I'm not mentally stable for whatever reason that might be, or I'm experiencing a depressive episode, or if I'm meeting somebody new and I don't know what their intentions are. During these times, I tend to go pretty quiet and I don't talk much. I also suffer from extreme negative perception a lot, which is actually something I've been experiencing a lot more since I'm getting laid off from my most recent job. It's made me feel like I'm never going to be able to find a job I can do due to these disorders that I have, and is actually a big reason why I started the channel. If I'm getting yelled at or somebody becomes angry with me, without fail, I will have an anxiety or a panic attack. Additionally, I will also try and escape the situation. I don't do well with people when they're angry at me, and this would be because of those traumatic experiences I mentioned involving my mom as well as the memories involving my dad. This highly affects my ability to work in places like the food industry, retail, or really anywhere involving customer service. And in combination with my generalized anxiety disorder and bipolar, I've either been terminated or have quit due to my PTSD. Admittedly, I do also have a pretty bad temper as well when I feel like I'm being attacked or misunderstood. This primarily stems from my experiences with my mom and her not taking my emotions seriously. The good news is that I've worked really hard for many years to work on my temper, and though I've had slip-ups in the past every now and then, I can say with confidence that I'm doing a lot better than what I was when I moved to Arizona. As for my goals, I would love to be able to overcome my PTSD when it comes to getting yelled at or having people be angry with me. I feel like that's a lot of my issue these days, and it affects me on so many different levels that I feel like I'm not able to function like other people. I think overall that's my biggest goal right now when it comes to living with PTSD and generalized anxiety disorder. With that being said, that is my experience with C-PTSD. I don't wish C-PTSD on anyone, but having it has allowed me to learn about the disorder and gain more awareness for it. I hope this video has been able to help you understand me and C-PTSD a little bit more. I do have plans to go over generalized anxiety disorder and bipolar 2 in the future, so keep an eye out for those. If you have anything you'd like to see on this channel, please feel free to put your suggestions down in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!